Welcome dear audience, students and scholars. Here I'm Dr. Amjad Ali. In this video we are going to discuss about the money market and the LM curve. Dear scholars, the LM curve plots the relationship between the interest rate and the level of income that arises in the market for the money balances. To understand this relationship, we begin by looking at a theory of interest rate called the theory of liquidity preference. The theory of liquidity preference, in his classic work, The Journal Theory, Keynes offered his view of how the interest rate is determined in the short run. His explanation is called the theory of liquidity preference because it posited that the interest rate adjusts to the balance, the supply and demand for the economy's most liquid asset, that is money. Just as the Keynesian class is a building block for the IS curve, the theory of liquidity preference is a building block for the LM curve. To develop this theory, we begin with the supply of real money balances. If M stands for the supply of money and P stands for the price level, then M over P is the supply of real money balances. The theory of liquidity preference assumes there is a fixed supply of real money balances, that is M over PS is equal to M over bar over P over bar. So over bar present the fixed amount of those variables. So here we have a fixed supply of real money balances. Here the supply of money M is an exogenous variable chosen by central bank, such as Federal Reserve in case of US and State Bank of Pakistan in case of Pakistan. The price level is also as an exogenous variable in the model. These assumptions implies that supply of real money balances is fixed and in particular does not depend on interest rate. Thus, when we plot the supply of real money balances against the interest rate, we obtain a vertical supply curve. So let's see a graphical presentation for that. The theory of liquidity preference, we have here real money balances M over P on x-axis, and we have interest rate on y-axis, and we have a vertical supply curve because we suppose that we have a fixed supply of real money balances. So we have a downward sloping demand curve, and is this at this point we have M over bar over P over bar, and where the demand and supply curve intersect each other, that is our equilibrium interest rate. So these figures explain that the supply and demand for real money balances determine the interest rate in the economy. The supply curve for the real money balances is vertical because supply does not depend on interest rate. The demand curve is downward sloping because a higher interest rate raises the cost of holding money and thus lower the quantity demanded. At equilibrium interest rate, real money balances demanded equals the quantity supplied. Okay, while talking about the theory of liquidity preference, now consider the demand for real money balances. The theory of liquidity preference posted that interest rate is one determinant of how much money people choose to hold. Okay, the underlying reason is that the interest rate is opportunity cost of holding money. It is what you forego for holding some of your assets as money, which does not bear interest rate instead of as interest bearing bank deposits or bonds. Okay, when the interest rate rises, people want to hold less of their wealth in the form of money. We can write the demand for real money balances as M over P D is equal to LR. So here L bracket R shows the quantity of money depends on interest rate, as we have approved in our graphical presentation that demand curve is downward slope because higher interest rate reduces the quantity of real money balances demanded. According to the theory of liquidity preference, the supply and demand for real money balances determine what interest rate prevails in the economy. That is, the interest rate adjusts to equilibrate the money market. As we have approved in the figure, at the equilibrium interest rate, the quantity of real money balances demanded equals the quantity supplied. So here we have one of the main questions, that how does the interest rate get to this equilibrium of money supply and money demanded. To adjust the adjustment occurs because whenever the money market is not in equilibrium, people try to adjust their portfolios of assets and in the process alter the interest rate. For instance, if the interest rate is above the equilibrium level, the quantity of real money balances supplied exceed the quantity demanded. Individuals holding the excess supply of money try to convert some of their non-interest bearing money into interest bearing bank deposits or bonds. Banks and bond issuers who prefer to pay lower interest rate respond to this excess supply of money by lowering the interest rates they offer. Conversely, if the interest rate is below the equilibrium level so that the quantity of money demanded exceeds the quantity supplied, individuals try to obtain money by selling bonds or making banks withdrawals. To attract new scarce funds, banks and bond issuers respond by increasing the interest rate they offer. Eventually, the interest rate reaches the equilibrium level at which people are content with their portfolios of monetary and non-monetary assets. Know that we can see that how the interest rate is determined. We can use the theory of liquidity preference to show how the interest rate responds to change in the supply of money. Suppose, for instance, that the central bank suddenly decreases the money supply. A fall in the money supply will reduce the real money balances because we have a fixed amount of prices in the model. So supply of real money balances shift to the leftward. So let's see a graphical presentation for that. A reduction in the money supply in the theory of liquidity preference, we have real money balances on x-axis and we have interest rate on y-axis, and we have supply curve, vertical supply curve, and we have a downward sloping demand curve, and we have real money balances M1 over P, and the intersection of demand and supply will decide the level of interest rate in the economy. So a fall in the money supply by the central bank will shift the supply curve from this to this supply curve. So this will reduces the money balances from M1 P to M2 over P. So this will raises the interest rate in the economy from R1 to R2. So the higher interest rate makes people satisfied to hold the smaller quantity of real money balances. The opposite would occur if the central bank has suddenly increased the supply of money. Thus, according to the theory of liquidity preference, a decrease in the money supply raises the interest rate, and an increase in the money supply lowers the interest rate in the economy. Income, money demand, and the LM curve. having developed the theory of liquidity preference as an explanation for how the interest rate is determined in the economy, we can now use the theory of liquidity preference to drive the LM curve. Let's begin by considering the following question: that how does a change in the economy's level of income why affect the market for the real money balances? The answer is that the level of income affects the demand for money. When income is high, expenditure is high, so people engage in more transactions that requires the use of money. Okay, thus a greater income implies greater money demand. We can express these ideas by writing the money demand function as M over P. D is the function of interest rate and income. Thus the quantity of real money balances demanded is negatively related to the interest rate and positively related to income. Using the theory of liquidity preference, we can figure out what happens to the equilibrium interest rate when the level of income changes. So let's see a graphical presentation for that. Driving the LM curve, we have here two panels. The first panel is the market for the real money balances, and the second panel we have the LM curve. So in the first panel we have real money balances on x-axis and we have interest rate on y-axis, and we have a vertical supply curve, and we have a downward sloping a demand curve, and we have a fixed real money balances M over bar over P over bar. The intersection of supply and demand will decide the interest rate in the economy, that is R1. So an increase in income raises the money demand, and the money demand curve will shift rightward or upward. Okay, this will increase the interest rate in the economy, that is from R1 to R2. Now take these lines or facts to the LM curve part. So here we have income output on y-axis, y on x-axis. This is for x-axis, and we have interest rate on y-axis. Okay, when we have this interest rate, we can take this interest rate into this part, and we have our one interest rate same, and we can take this interest rate to this part. With this part of interest rate, we have y1 income. As we have a rise in income, will shift the demand curve upward, and which raises the interest rate in the economy. So we have a higher interest rate with higher income. Okay, by joining these points we get the LM curve. So we have approved that with the supply of real money balances unchanged, the interest rate rises from R1 to R2 when we have a higher level of income and we have a higher level of money demand. So therefore, according to the theory of liquidity preference, higher income leads to a higher interest rate. Okay, while talking about the LM curve part, which summarize the relationship between the income and interest rate, each point on the LM curve represent the equilibrium in the money market at which the curve illustrates that how the equilibrium interest rate depends on the level of income. The higher the level of income, the higher the demand for real money balances, and the higher equilibrium interest rate for the economy. For this reason, we have a LM curve upward slope. Okay, here we have one of the main questions, that how monetary policy shifts the LM curve. The LM curve tells us the interest rate that equilibrates the money market at any level of income. Okay, yet as we saw earlier, the equilibrium interest rate also depends on money of real money balances, or we can say the supply of real money balances, that is M over P. Okay, this means that the LM curve is drawn for a given supply of real money balances. If real money balances changes, for example, if the Fed or central bank alters the money supply, the LM curve will shift. We can use the theory of liquidity preference to understand how monetary policy shifts the LM curve. Suppose that Fed or central bank decreases the money supply from M1 to M2, which causes the supply of real money balances to fall from M1 to M2, or we can say that M1 over P to M2 over P. So let's see a graphical presentation for that. A reduction in the money supply shifts the LM curve upward. So we have two panels here, the market for the real money balances. We have real money balances on x-axis, and we have interest rate on y-axis, and we have a vertical supply curve, and we have a downward sloping demand curve with the variable interest rate and fixed amount of income. So where the demand and supply curve intersect each other, that is equilibrium interest rate R1, and we have the real money balances M1 over P. Okay, here the central bank or the Fed reduces the money supply, and we have a reduction in real money balances, and then the supply curve will shift to the leftward, and we have reduced real money balances, and we have rising the interest rate, increasing the interest rate from R1 to R2, because now our supply curve intersect our demand curve at this point. Okay, now what happened to the LM curve? We have income output y on x-axis, and we have interest rate r on y-axis, and with this interest rate we have LM1 LM curve, and we have that income. We have supposed that we have a fixed income, and with fixed income, when we have a lower supply of curve, that lower supply of curve will increases the interest rate, and that rise in interest rate will shifted the LM curve upward. So we have, because we have supposed that we have a same level of income, so whenever the Federal Reserve reduces the supply of money, this will reduces the real money balances, and this will increases the interest rate, and this will shifted the LM curve from LM1 to LM2 when we have a fixed amount of income. So the Fed reduces the money supply and we have a higher LM2. So holding the constant amount of income and as the demand curve for real money balances, we see that a reduction in supply of real money balances raises the interest rate that equilibrates the money market. Hence, a decrease in the money supply shifts the LM curve upward. So see here, upward. In summary, the LM curve shows the combinations of interest rate and the level of income that are consistent with equilibrium in the market for real money balances. The LM curve is drawn for a given supply of real money balances. Decreases in the supply of real money balances shift the LM curve upward. Increases in the supply of real money balances shifted the LM curve downward. So this is all about the money market and LM curve. So see you with another video. Ciao.